Hey, everybody, this is Bobby Cool Daddy Slick Breeze, and we have another player interview. This one I did with Dixon Jowers, who's here in town. He lives here in Emporia, Kansas. So he was able to come into the studio and do the interview with us. You'll probably recognize him from, he used to work for us here at Dynamic Disc. He used to be on the show, Disc Golf Answerman, every now and then we started a podcast called Inside the Circle. So anyway, let's hear what Dixon had to say. All right, so we've got Dixon Jowers in the house on a rainy Emporia Monday. But you've got cause for celebration because you just won the Monkey Island Open yesterday. How's it feel to be the winner?
I did. 2-time winner of the Monkey Island Open. I won last year. Last year was only 4 people. This year was 7. So not huge fields, but a great group of guys that I played with. I had a good time yesterday.
Now, yesterday was kind of a mixture of, for the pro day, it was not bad. It had a little bit of wind in the afternoon. But how did the course play for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little chilly, but not awful. It drizzled for like 5 minutes. The sun came out super bright and warm for like 2 holes, and we all took our coats off and our hats off, and then the sun went behind the clouds and the wind came back, and we all pulled our coats and hats back out and everything. I mean, Peter Pan is Peter Pan. Like, I feel every time I go out there, I feel like I could shoot 20 under par on this course, and then you shoot like 3. So I mean, every hole is birdieable.
Yeah.
Or gettable if you throw a good shot, but there's just enough trees to get in your head. There's just enough place to land 50 feet out. There's just enough trouble to make it a fun and course that you can challenge. But at the same time, if you're not very precise, you can have a lot of 35-foot putts for birdie and end up with a lot of pars.
Now, Peter Pan is often the park or the course that we tell people to go, they got to play when they come to Emporia. Is that kind of for you? Because it's kind of a mix of.
It depends on who I'm talking to.
Okay.
If it's just kind of Joe average player, yeah, I say absolutely go over to Pan because it's a fun course and it's scoreable, meaning there's birdies to be had for lots of skill levels. If it's an upper level player, I say, hey, if you kind of want the Emporia experience, go play East.
Yeah.
And I say, I mean, personally, my favorite course in town is Opie, because it's so difficult.
A lot of people are not going to like you after that.
Well, and that's
a lot of
fine.
people don't like Opie.
A lot of people aren't good at disc golf.
That's true.
I mean, it is on a normal day, it is very challenging for an open player.
Yeah.
On a bad day, it's almost not playable.
Yeah.
And yes, you can lose lots of plastic out there. You don't have to. If you lose plastic, it's because you're either throwing awful or you're really attacking the holes.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can play it conservative and just get a giant score and never lose a Frisbee. So if you're a high level player and you want to get a good score, it forces you to attack it, which is what I love about it, because you can't score well out there and play safe.
And I think maybe people that aren't quite pro, that's what happens is they're used to going to a course that's a little safer, and they can really, their mistakes aren't exaggerated as much. In other words, you can make up for a mistake, but over there at Opie, a mistake is in the water.
Yep.
So,
well, and the reality is you can only throw your disc in the water on probably 7 holes or so, 7 or 8 holes. And some of those you really have to try to throw it in the water, but it just feels like every hole is a headwind 400-foot carry water hole when it's not. That's just the impression that you get.
Yeah. Because
every hole, that course is poking you in the chest saying, hey, you want a piece of me, pal?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I love about it.
It definitely shows its teeth for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yesterday at the Monkey Island Open, we had for both events, for the pro, intermediate, and then, of course, the advanced divisions, we had the 5K, 10K Ace Challenge, and that was hole 7. Describe hole 7 for everybody.
It is a slight downhill. It kind of goes down into a bowl and then back up. Yeah. So from tee to basket, it's only a little bit downhill, although through the middle of the flight, it feels a lot more downhilly because of that valley. I think it's 370, 380. And there's water about 30 feet behind it, but that water doesn't even really seem to come into play because in order to get to the water, you have to really smoke a drive and hit a tiny gap right at the very end because there's enough trees at the end blocking you.
Guess who made that water?
Scott Reek made the water, and that was the first time I'd ever seen anybody make the water.
Robert made the water too. Robert McCall.
Yeah, we were talking about yesterday morning that I think actually, let me search the memory banks real quick. I think playing with Robert on Saturday afternoon, we tried to get a couple of holes of practice in after the advanced divisions got done.
Uh-huh.
And I think we talked about that it's almost impossible to get to the water.
He got it on that second round.
I'll have to ask him because, normally after the rounds, me and Robert will go eat together and we'll do the whole Dear Diary thing,
right,
and talk about every hole of our round and what we did good and what we did wrong and how that guy on the card should have totally gotten a bogey and he got a birdie and all that sort of stuff, right? And we did that at lunch yesterday. Talked about I could describe just about every shot of his first round. After the second round, I said, so how'd it go? And he goes, I don't want to talk about it. So I didn't know that he did that on that hole because he had nothing to say about the second round other than, I bet I shot worse than you, is what he said.
Yeah.
We have an ongoing bet, a year-long bet. Every time we play together on the same course, either a casual round or in a tournament, we keep all of those scores. And so he beat me by 2 strokes yesterday, the first round. I beat him by 2 strokes the second round. So we're still all square for the year through like about 7 rounds. Last year, I want to say we were 40 or 50 something rounds. And he had a big lead early on because he beat me by, I think it was 11 or 12 at the country club in one round early in the year, when literally a disc would land 50 feet from OB and a gale force wind would pick it up out of nowhere and fling it into the water or something. It was the most ridiculous amount of OB I've ever seen. Eric was playing that round too, and he was like, I don't know if I've seen somebody go OB this much on relatively normal shots. But I ended up getting him at the end last year, so he's out for revenge this year. So that's why we have to report our scores, but we don't necessarily have to report all of our findings.
Well, Robert likes to bet a lot. He's got that bet with me for the 1,000 rating, and now he's got the bet with you.
Well, and I don't know if I'm telling tales out of school here. That's on his mind. That bet with you is on his mind. So me and him and Miles Seaborn, we have a text chat that we've had going for years.
Right.
And Miles likes to figure out ratings ahead of time. And so a couple of times within the last month, he'll say, hey, great tournament, Robert. I've run the numbers. You're going to be 999 at the next update. He's done that twice now. So Robert was feeling really good after the first round yesterday, 10-15, and then like a 965 or something. Oh. And he averaged, I think, either 980 or 990 for the tournament.
Oh, God.
So like it's on him. The first round at Waco, he was feeling really good. And then he had that awful hole on hole 17, the first round. So he had a really great comeback in the third round, but I don't know what his overall average for Waco was. I mean, he's going to be close, and it is on his mind.
Good, it better be.
He wants to tell you,
I know he does.
Buy my lunch, Bobby.
I know he does. We talk about it all the time. In fact, he said something, I'm probably telling on him too, but he said, hey, tomorrow or next week on Disc Golf, this is after Monkey Island Open in the second round, he goes, hey, on Disc Golf Fans, man, let's just kind of not even talk about this event. But
it's too much out there in the disc golf world. The Disc Golf Answer fans know that this is a thing.
Oh yeah,
and they're going to bring it up.
But just like the bet you have going with him, the advice that I've heard you say and we've said here on the show, put something on the line, even if it's just for bragging rights, for fun. It still gives you something to shoot for, rather than these people are like, how do I make it to where it feels like a tournament round? We'll put something on the line so that at least there's something that kind of pushing you.
Well, and here's a practical example of how that works. So I have this year-long bet with Robert. So yesterday, going into the second round, I was leading Scott Reek by 1 stroke. And the next guy I think was maybe 4 or 5 back. So I just thought, coming out of lunch, okay, me and Scott are going to battle. Okay. I'm sure he thinks I could have shot better the first round. I think I could have shot better. So we both feel there's improvement to be made. We both feel that we can beat the other guy. And on the first hole, I took a 2 and he took a 5. So it instantly went from a 4-stroke or 1-stroke lead to a 4-stroke lead. And so at that point, I was like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna coast. I'll just make sure that I don't have any huge numbers. Well, about halfway through the round, I've done this for several holes, just coasting. And then I thought, oh man, what if Robert's having a hot round? I better get my stuff together. I better. And I'm not just playing against Scott now. I'm playing against Robert in a totally other division because I don't want him to come in 5 strokes better than me, because all I was worried about was coasting over here. So I'm going to start taking some shots seriously.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't really help my score at that point, but it did affect me of, even during a tournament, you can get lazy in your mind. And that outside bet with Robert helped me focus for the second half of the second round.
Nice. So back to the Ace Challenge, hole 7. What did you throw and did you get close?
Lucid Enforcer. So recently on that hole, I've been coming up short. I like to try to just put a big hyzer on it. But the most difficult part about that hole is the basket is in between 3 trees that are set up like a triangle.
Yeah.
And each of those trees is less than 5 feet from the basket. So if you have a 20-foot putt on that hole, it's almost always you're going to have to bend around a tree. There's a couple places you can land where it's wide open, but for the most part, you're going to have to deal with a tree. So I always try to get super close, and I want to be coming in on a spike angle.
Yeah,
is how I like to approach that. So I like to throw high hyzers, and I've been coming up short, 30 feet or so short and right, which is when you line up short and right 30 feet of the hole, you almost cannot see the basket because of the size of the tree. Mm-hmm. So I was saying, okay, I'm going to get there. That's the only thing I'm going to not do is be short. So I was trying to throw a super hard hyzer with an enforcer, and I basically said, I'm going to throw this as hard as I can. And it came out a little flat, and I would have found the water, except for there's this giant cedar tree about 50 feet to the right of the basket. And I hit that and plopped out of that about 40 feet straight right of the hole. I was pin high, but no chance at an ace because of that tree. And if the tree hadn't have been there, probably would have splashed down.
Wow.
So no, it was not. There was nothing exciting about it on our entire card. Nothing really good.
Well, of course, if you guys don't know, the Ace Challenge is something that we do at our events, and we also offer it to you to be able to do it at your events. But if you get an ace at a certain hole, there's of course guidelines you have to follow. You get $5,000. But if you do it with one of our discs, Dynamic Disc, Latitude 64, Westside Disc, double that, you get $10,000. And I've never seen so many people disappointed at parking a hole like that. Mm-hmm. Because they got so close, and they're like, and they're like, well, but you parked it 10 feet out. And so anyway.
So my first time I ever played one of those holes, this was like 03 or something in Louisville, Lake Louisville, hole number 3 at the lake course. And it's basically a straight shot. You're throwing over the corner of a lake to this really kind of rocky outcropping. And I threw an 0-2 rock. I used to throw rocks all the time. Mm-hmm. And this disc would just fly dead straight. And once it got going, I could, with high accuracy, tell you where it was going to finish up because it didn't do hardly anything in the air. And it was lined up on the pole about 4 feet above the basket. And I knew this is going to drop. The further it goes, it's going to drop. This has a real chance. And I went right over the top of the pole, about 3 inches over the top of the basket. And the whole way it looked great. So on hole 4, the tee box is probably, 70 or 80 feet from hole 3's box, maybe 100, kind of around a corner, but it's close enough to where you can hear what's going on. So I'm grumbling to my card as we're on hole 4, racking, fracking, stinging. It was good the whole time. It didn't drop. What's the wind? I'm all upset. And then we hear the chains blow up right behind us. So we go running around the corner. Coda Hatfield hit the pole and bounced out. Hit the pole through the chains and bounced out. So then I didn't feel so bad about my buzz in the tower. So he had a $10,000 splash.
Wow. Ouch.
And
that would hurt.
I felt bad about my circumstances.
So as you can tell, Dixon Jowers, Team Dynamic Disc, loves to talk disc golf, as we've already been talking disc golf for a good 12 minutes before we even got to who you are. Now, I'm sure most of our listeners are familiar with Dixon Jowers have been on our show before. Then we had the Inside the Circle show. And then, of course, now doing your own stuff with Disc Golf Pro Tour and your own podcast On the Box. But for some of the new listeners, tell us how you got your start. Now, I see on PDJ you've been a member since 2000, so it's you've been in disc golf for at least 18 years. But tell us how you got your start in disc golf.
Me and my college roommates thought at the time that we invented disc golf. Mm-hmm. We played Ultimate all the time, and we had an Ultimate game where the other team didn't show up. But we had another game to play in like an hour and a half or something like that. So we didn't want to go home and take our cleats off and do all of that. So we're all sitting around with our Ultimate discs. And somebody says, hey, I bet I can hit that tree. No, you can. I can hit the tree. So we threw to the tree. Somebody hit it in 2 shots. So they won the tree hole. Or we didn't even call it a hole. It was just you hit the tree first. So then it was like, I bet I can hit the front tire of that truck. And I bet I can hit that telephone pole. And so we just played around the intramural fields at the University of Arkansas. And then after those games, we would play around our apartment complex. And we got tired of playing around there. So we started to go on campus at nighttime and play, throwing, to that building and to that tree and land in the fountain and that sort of stuff. And a security guard, there's a building at University of Arkansas called the Engineering Building. Mm-hmm. And it's got these 2 bridges that go from an elevated sidewalk to like the 3rd floor of a building. And then the ground totally slopes away beneath the bridges. So it's really cool. So we were trying to throw from one bridge to the next. Mm-hmm. And somebody would turn it over and hit the building, and a security guard was over there. And he says, come on, guys. Can't be throwing your Frisbees at our buildings. And we were like, hey, man, we're just out here throwing Frisbees. And he says, why don't y'all go out to the course? And we were like, course? What are you talking about, course? He said, man, there's a place over there at the park that they got these basket things that you throw into. And that was our introduction to disc golf. So we played at the course in town with our ultimate discs for about a year.
Wow.
And our opinion was, if you needed one of those golf discs, I mean, if you can't throw an ultimate disc far enough, well, yeah, of course, you can use the handicap golf disc over there. You need some help. Uh-huh. And over the course of playing with our ultimate disc, we would find, it seemed like Cyclone was the disc that we found the most, the old Discraft Cyclone. Mm-hmm. And so we would just throw them in the trunk. And one fateful day, me and my roommate, Dixon Jowers, were playing around our apartment, and we were playing 18 holes, and we were tied. And we played a next hole, and it got to like 30 holes, and we were still tied. And it was this last hole going from our front door out to this planter, this big wooden planter out in the courtyard. Mm-hmm. And I threw a great drive and had like 5 feet left, and he turned his over. It's a terrible shot. He throws his second shot and misses. So, of course, being the relationship that me and Dixon have, I'm standing there 5 feet away trying to hit like a 5-foot wide planter. I mean, it's not that difficult, right? And I'm like, oh, maybe I'm going to miss it. Oh, Dixon, I don't know. Maybe. So he comes running over and tries to pull the disc out of my hand. And this was my ultimate. I mean, this was Old Blue. This was my ultimate disc. And when he pulled it out of my hand, it tore in two.
Oh, wow.
And we both stared at each other. I mean, there was drama happening between our eyes at this point. Like it was, I mean, our whole relationship was being fought right then. It was
on the line right there.
And so the next time we went out to play disc golf at the park, I was like, well, I'll try one of these Cyclone things. And I threw it and smashed it and was like, maybe these things aren't so bad. And so then I remember we ordered our very first disc from Gotta Go, Gotta Throw. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is like 98 or something. The internet's a pretty new thing at this point. Yeah. Like the idea of ordering a Frisbee online, the idea of ordering anything online was, and I was coming home from class and the daggum UPS sticker was on the door. Hey, we tried to deliver. And I was really excited about this disc. So I drove the neighborhood around Fayetteville until I saw a UPS truck and was like, you tried to deliver this out of my house. And he was like, man, there's like 9 trucks driving around. So it was the 4th truck I was literally just driving up and down streets looking for a UPS truck. And on the 4th one, I asked him if he delivered to our apartments. And he said, yeah. And he got me the thing. And that was my first disc purchase. My first tournament was in this May of 99. Wow. In Little Rock, Arkansas, Burns Park.
So with the Ultimate now how long did you play Ultimate before? Quite a few years?
Yeah, years before that.
So how would you say, I mean, we know of a lot of people that had their start in Ultimate. How does that help your game, do you think?
The way that it helped me is, I mean, I had to change my ultimate throw because I was playing disc golf. I mean, we'd have ultimate games once or twice a week, but I was going every day after class and playing 4 or 5 rounds of golf out at the park. Every day. I was playing way more golf, so I adopted my ultimate throw. What it helped me with, I mean, I used to throw a lot more mid-ranges. I used to be famous because I would have like 9 or 10 rocks in my bag of all different plastics and beat-in levels and whatnot. And what it taught me and what I was able to do is really play with my nose angle. Lots of spin on a disc, on standstill shots. I could still get it out there pretty good. And I could throw lots of different types of shots with the same disc because of my nose angle. And that was all ultimate. Because very rarely in a game of ultimate are you just wide open and can throw however you want. You're almost always forced to do something by the opponent. And so you've got to be able to throw lots of crazy angles in ultimate. And that helped me coming over to disc golf. And surprisingly, I throw a forehand a lot when I'm playing ultimate, and if I throw a forehand playing disc golf, something went wrong.
Yeah,
like I'm in a bad spot if I throw a forehand.
Yeah. Now, do you think anything with ultimate hurt your disc golf game? Is there like any habits that you had to really get rid of from ultimate?
No, not really. Yeah. I mean, playing disc golf hurt my ultimate game because all of a sudden I was running a whole lot less, and so like I got way out of shape. I mean, my right arm got great, really strong playing disc golf because I was throwing so much more. But my cardio went way down. My ability to run went way down. Like we're hosting at for the GBO, we're going to have an ultimate game sponsored by On the Box. And I mean, I'm really starting to think about, buddy, you better start running. You hadn't played ultimate in months. you're going to die out there in front of everybody if you don't get your cardio up in the next month.
Well, I remember last year playing some of the Ultimate games, me just filming it, I was out of breath. And I remember people just having to stop and really catch their breath because they didn't, you watch Ultimate and you're like, yeah, they run around, but you don't realize how much running around is happening.
The thing I love, Ultimate is probably my favorite team sport out of everything because I think it is the absolute essence of sport. To a large degree, on every play, it is you against a person on offense and defense because it switches so quickly. It is you against another guy.
Yeah.
It is constant competition at all times. And if you start walking, you're dead.
Yeah.
The other guy's going to jog, and all of a sudden he's wide open.
Yeah.
On defense or offense. It is an absolute constant movement sport. And if you sometimes if you just start jogging for a while, you're dead.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of the times. I think Ultimate is a fantastic sport to play co-ed. There are advantages to being a male playing Ultimate, and there are advantages to being a female. Just about every female I've ever played doesn't even jog. They are running or sprinting 100% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm chasing that person, I could be way bigger than them. I can throw way farther. I could outweigh them by 100 pounds and knock them over if we're jumping for a disc, even though you're not supposed to do that. If it was an accident. I have so many advantages. But 5 minutes into the game, those advantages are absolutely gone because she has not stopped running.
Yeah.
And I can't keep up. And all of a sudden, I'm 20 yards behind her, and she's running free just through the daisies, catching discs and throwing to her players. And they're scoring because there's 5 on offense against 2 on defense because I can't keep up. So I mean, that's one of the things I love about Ultimate is you very quickly you get that sense of, hey pal, if you want to play this game, you better get your stuff together. Because there's lots of people that you're better than that will wipe the floor with you.
I'm looking forward to that Ultimate during Glassman Open. But back to your career in disc golf. So I was looking through your history, and from 2000 to about 2004 and coming up to 2009, you're playing maybe 3, 4, 10 tournaments. But then in 2012, you played from 2009 to 2012, you're playing nearly 20 tournaments a year.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened there?
Well, the big change there. So I was a youth pastor either as an intern in seminary. I started seminary in 2000 and was an intern for several years, and then was a youth pastor until about 2010 or so.
Mm-hmm.
So during that time, I mean, playing a 2-day event, I mean, it just wasn't possible.
Yeah.
I mean, you have as a minister as your job. I mean, you have time off like every other job does, but you want to always try to avoid missing Sundays because that's kind of the big day of the week. As far as, being with the people that you're ministering to. So, I mean, that was only happening 2, 3, 4 times a year.
Yeah.
When I moved down to Houston, even being the youth pastor, there was a group called Birdshot down in Houston, run by Andy Young, that she would run once a month, a 1-day C-tier on Saturdays. That was probably 2008, 2009, and that's when I started to play a lot more because I could play all of these 1-day C-tiers. And then once I resigned from the ministry in 2010 and took a regular job, and then I was able to start playing more events at that point. So that's when you see the count go way up.
Yeah, and I noticed obviously because you're playing more, the ratings are going up as far as your rating and stuff like that. But tell us, a lot of our listeners, we tell them to get out and play tournaments and play as many as you can. What is it like to play disc golf, discover it, and then now you're really competing to be, the best you can be?
Mm-hmm.
What is that transformation in your mind to do that?
I mean, I think the difference between a casual player and a tournament player is that love of competition.
Yeah.
Because there's lots of people that they enjoy the flight of the disc, they enjoy the walk in the park, they enjoy the camaraderie. For me, it's time with my friends.
Right.
That sort of stuff that the PDJ was going for. But if you desire competition, you need to play minis, you need to play tournaments, you need to play leagues, because, I mean, next time you go play a casual round, look at how easy it is to step a foot to the left,
right?
Or you putt, you miss a 10-footer. I would have made that, and you just count it as a birdie. There's all sorts of ways that you can fudge the numbers and feel good about yourself, feel good about your round, and you never think, boy, I'm breaking the rules here, or I'm being dishonest. It's just easy to do that when it's casual. When it's in a tournament, there's none of that stuff, and so it puts a focus on every individual thing, and it focuses you to compete with yourself to be the best that you can be. And I mean, I'll just speak for myself here, but I assume there's lots of people. It's easy to be lazy.
Mm-hmm.
It's super easy to be lazy. And by forcing myself to not be lazy, that's good for me as a man. That's good for me as a person to try to get away from that sort of, I'll just sit around.
Yeah.
And so a tournament, I mean, on a very minuscule scale, a tournament helps me to be a better person because it helps me to focus on things that I might not focus on normally. It helps me to take seriously what I'm doing.
That's good. Now, a lot of the natural evolution I've seen, or at least it seems that people talk, is they discover disc golf, they amateur, then they become a pro, and then they want to go on tour.
Mm-hmm.
Was that ever an aspiration of yours?
I mean, yes, sitting around dreaming about wouldn't it be great to win events and that sort of stuff, but it never really was a reality. Because by the time that I resigned from student ministry was right around when my first son was born, or my only son, but my first kid. Mm-hmm. And so it's just not it's just not something that I wouldn't want to be on tour more than I would want to be a husband and a father.
Gotcha.
And so as great as it would be, the money would have to be there to where I could fly into an event, play an event, and fly home. Mm-hmm. And so I'm only missing 2 or 3 days at a time. But the way it is now, with let's say I wanted to go play like the San Francisco Open is the fourth event on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. I think it's the beginning of June, maybe. If I wanted, let's just say I wanted to go play that event. The event is a 3-day event. I'd have to get out there at least a couple of days early in order to practice the course because I have no idea what it's like. I got to fly on some day. I got to fly home on some day. So, I mean, you're talking about almost a week, not to mention the $500 airfare, the hotels, the Uber rides or the cabs or the rental car or whatever. I mean, it just, for a lot of people, if you're not, if you don't have some sort of outside income or if you're not independently wealthy, tournament life, touring life is just not financially feasible.
Do you ever think disc golf, I mean, I got to imagine at some point it'll get somewhere more people can do that, but do you think that'll happen in our lifetime?
I've always been hopeful, but I can remember being hopeful in 2001 and hearing the old timers at that point say, hey man, we're right around the corner. We are about to explode. We're almost there. I got a buddy. He works at Coca-Cola and he's talking to his boss, but it's some guy that works on the loading dock that's talking to Gerald, his boss. It's like, hey, I don't know anything about sponsorship. We're just a canning company. Right. So, I mean, we always talk about we're right there. I mean, skateboarding was around for forever before the X Games happened. Everybody talks about, hey, we could be like skateboarding. We could be like rollerblading. But, I mean, they were at it a long time before that ever came to be.
I remember there's some footage on YouTube from, I think it's 99 Worlds or 98 Worlds. I know even Crazy John Brooks was in the footage. And even I think Scott Stokely. Mm-hmm. But the commentators, you would have thought they played it last year. Disc golf is on the cusp. It was sponsored by Pizza Hut, mm-hmm. and disc golf was on the cusp of just getting discovered. The fastest growing sport you never heard of. I mean, everything you hear recently. So
I think they still use that phrase.
Yeah.
Now, on the positive side, the PDJ released some numbers last year. There was 275,000 tournament players last year. That's a huge number.
Yeah.
I mean, even from 10 years ago, that's increased by exponents since then. So I mean, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And I mean, I think the grassroots idea is the only way it's going to happen, but I have no idea what that magic number is. Yeah. Maybe it's 300,000 tournament players. Maybe it's 1 million and we're several years away. Maybe it's just that one, some celebrity that's got, 1 billion Instagram followers picks up disc golf and takes a picture of it. Maybe it's something silly like that.
Yeah.
Or, some CEO at Chevron or something like that has a heart attack and his doctor says, well, hey, you need to get out and do some more exercise. And he's walking at the park and he finds disc golf. And I mean, maybe there's something like that. Who knows? Or maybe it's just 10, 20 more years of all of us doing our grassroots stuff and playing our minis and running our events and doing charity events for the community and going to speak at elementary schools. And maybe that's what it takes. Who knows?
To me, I think that is what it takes. I think people keep looking for these defining moments, like boom. It's like 1 second we're nothing, next second we're now mainstream,
right.
And they forget about all the little stuff in between, which is just getting out there and playing, getting out there and supporting disc golf companies or supporting the sponsors. Those little things are what's going to get us there.
Well, and the work that's going to be required is enormous.
Yeah.
So I've been working with the Disc Golf Pro Tour this year, and just watched it as a fan for the last 2 years. But kind of getting to be on the other side of the curtain, you have no idea how much work goes into pulling that off.
I know.
None, absolutely none. And these people that are talking about, well, we want to have a different tour to support whatever our cause is, oh my gosh, give it a try.
Right.
Give it a try, because as quirky as Steve Dodge can be, and I say that as a friend, as quirky as he can be sometimes, that joker has put in work over the last 3 years. And his kind of happy-go-lucky attitude belies the fact that he's juggling 1,000 things at a time. And he is doing his absolute best to make sure that tour stays afloat. Like the Disc Golf World Tour, they had a specific idea about, okay, the Disc Golf Pro Tour is basically, we want to make a geographically and we want to make a tour that makes sense on the map and on the calendar, so that everybody can follow it. The Pro Tours or the World Tour's idea was, we think media is what's going to grow the sport the best, not the money necessarily. We want to have 3 or 4 or 5 super high quality events with fantastic media coverage, and they did that. But even working towards they saw that, okay, some other things have to change. We can't, even the model that we've tried, it can't sustain. As great as it was, there were still things that needed to change. So even a super smart businessman backed by the biggest company in disc golf, even that needed to have some tweaking,
right?
Because there's just so many moving parts, and as great as an effort that was, even that didn't work in its normal iteration. And so they're going to try some different things, and I sure hope they're coming back in 2019. I hope there's new tours. I hope other people try to give it, even though it is such hard work. I hope they give it a shot, because that's the sort of thing that grows it. And I know grow the sport has been a hashtag for a few years, and everybody kind of got behind it at first, and now people are kind of using it as like a sarcastic hashtag,
right?
Of hey, Ricky has a foot fault, hashtag grow the sport, stuff like that. We've just got to keep getting it in front of people.
Yeah.
That's the only way we do it, right? It's showed up on just about every disc golf discussion page. I can't believe ESPN's showing cornhole and we can't even get a $5,000 sponsor.
I'm so sick of seeing that.
I am too, but I mean, that showed up on my podcast discussion page this last week. Even though it's been argued about for 2 years now, however long cornhole's been on TV. But the reality is, okay, how many people could care less about cornhole are talking about it online? That's the sort of, yes, we just got to get it out there in front of people. And even if people are making fun of it, we always get mad. Hey, every time there's a disc golf clip on SportsCenter, they sound like, disc golf is stupid. They won't treat us like real athletes. Well, at least they're treating us like stupid little kids in front of, 20 million people. Like, we just got to keep getting out there, and we can't get wrapped up into this. We need our respect and we need our money and all this. We just got to keep doing what we're doing and hope that it lands sooner or later.
Absolutely. Now back to your team page. Just a couple things I want to get your thoughts on. You had a beginner tip, which is forget about how you can drive. Work on getting up and down from 100 to 200, 150 to 200 feet, and wear yourself out at the practice basket. Why is that good advice?
It's drive for show, putt for dough.
Yeah.
If you think about, okay, so I said I didn't play this great at Monkey Island, but I had a great time. Where was I going wrong? Inside the circle putts. That was it. So I won Masters, and I think I would have missed cash by 1 in Open, because me and Robert tied. And I think, not to bring Robert up again, but I think he missed cash by 1. I think that was part of his telling me his score from the second round. If I would have hit my putts, I could have challenged for the win in Open.
Yeah, by 1 stroke.
But I didn't hit my putts. I mean, putting is the thing. Think back to, everybody that's listening, think back to your last tournament. If you think about, okay, what's the most consistent thing I messed up? Maybe you were trying some forehand roller out of the trees and you threw it out of bounds, but you only faced that shot one time. So, I mean, that can't be I'm going to really work on my forehand rollers out of the trees. How many putts did you miss from inside the circle? Like, think back to this last year and look at all of your tournaments. If you had made everything inside the circle, how would you have finished? How much more money would you have made? How many more trophies would you have if you had hit everything inside the circle? And so, being that is the thing, and it's so easy to work on. I mean, if you want to go work on your drives, well, you got to go pick all those Frisbees up. And you get tired much quicker, throwing, full body, full power shots over and over and over. And you walk down there and you throw them back and you throw them back. I mean, you can only do that a few times before you get tired. You can sit at a practice basket for an hour throwing putts.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's just 20 feet, just work on that 20-footer over and over. Comfortability and consistency in putting is the thing that works more than anything. Yes, Ricky is known as the best putter in the world. Do you guys know how much he practices putting? Hours. Even as the best guy in the world, he's still practicing for hours at putting. You can find him at the practice basket after a tournament almost every round. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the thing. If you want to be good at disc golf, make your stinking putts.
Yep.
That's what it boils down to.
Yeah. When I look at your lineup that you have on the team page, now I don't know if it's been updated, but I see you throwing the Enforcer, Defender, Ballista.
Although the Ballista, well, I still throw the Ballista, but the Ballista Pro has been added to the bag also.
But out of all those, what's the one you find yourself grabbing the most for your distance?
Lucid Enforcer.
Well,
for my distance,
yeah.
I mean, if I'm just going flat out distance, I'll grab a Ballista, not a Ballista Pro, although it's going far. My regular, I have one of those, one of the Scandinavian Open kind of older run ballistas. That is I can throw it with just a little bit of hyzer, and it goes for days. The ballista is a super fast disc. Although, hashtag product placement here. The Getaway is a prototype disc that we have for Dynamic Disc that's going to be coming out. I don't know if that's the Trilogy Challenge disc or
no. It'll be around GBO time.
Okay. We were told that was going to be like an Escape Pro,
right?
And the testers that we got were kind of Escape Pro-ish, maybe just a tiny bit more stable. There wasn't a whole lot of difference. The prototypes that we have are stinking stable.
Yeah.
And once I figured that out and I turned them over a little bit and gave it a good hard snap, I threw it and it was fine. And I thought, okay, that's a fine flight. And then it was sitting next to my Ballista. And I was like, wait a minute.
Oh.
Hold on, wait. This is like an 8-speed disc or something, 9-speed disc. That's not right. And I did it again. And it was sitting in the same spot. I got an ace the other day at Peter Pan, and I was super happy about that. And then I started picking up because like I was warming up some shots, and then I was like, okay, here we go. Here's my regular shot. So I had other frisbees to pick up. Couldn't find the Getaway because it was 30 feet past the basket. That disc is super impressing me as far as its glide. Like I don't know what the highest glide number is, but it should be this. And if it's not this, we need to make up a new glide number. I'm not getting into numbers, but just throwing that out there. The glide on this disc is really, really crazy. But the Ballista up until now, the Ballista has been my super go-to distance disc. But the more I work with this Getaway, I don't know.
Well, and like you said a few seconds ago, the Getaway was supposed to be kind of an Escape Pro. The Escape is something that you threw quite a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
I still have an Escape in my bag.
Yeah.
And the same thing
but
with the Escape. But
it's the same thing, I think, with the Escape is that it's got a lot of glide on it.
I remember when we first switched over and I was first throwing the Escape. I had a buddy. Me and him threw T-Birds and PDs all the time. And so we would throw our T-Birds about the same. And so he was asking me, hey, what do you think about these discs? And I said, all right, here you go. Throw your T-Bird on this hole. And it was about a 330-foot hole or something. And he slid his T-Bird right up to the basket. And I was like, all right, throw this Escape the exact same way you just threw that T-Bird. And he threw it, and he's like, oh, it flies about the same. And it hit a fence about 40 feet past the basket, still moving. And he was like, wait a minute. Wait, hold on. And I was like, yeah, exactly. Exactly. You throw the exact same shot, and it just keeps going. It just stays in the air. And I loved the T-Bird. Don't get me wrong. That's probably a top 10 disc, maybe a top 5 disc of all time.
Yeah.
But the glide on the Escape, it was just,
yeah.
That's what I told people. I was like, okay, you don't know much about this Swedish plastic stuff. Throw an Escape. The glide on this is it's different. I don't know why it's just so different than, it's not shaped all that much different than a T-Bird or a TL or a PD. But man, something's different with it. Yeah. It's the glide. You got to check out the glide.
Yeah. A memorable moment you have listed on your page that I want to get your story on is, you said getting an ace at daylight in front of a huge crowd during the Masters Cup.
So I grew up in Louisiana, and halfway through my junior year of high school, we moved to outside of San Francisco, which just totally separate story, quite the culture shock. Growing up in Louisiana, totally Southern, born and raised, to be in San Francisco all of a sudden. Excuse me. So my parents, when it was time to go to college, I wanted to get out of California because I wanted to get back to the South. Now it's fine to go visit out there. So my parents lived there for another 10 or 12 years after I went to high school. So in 2000, whatever, I don't know, 2002, 3, something like that. No, I was playing open. So I played Am Worlds in 2003 and then went to open. So sometime, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, long time ago.
Mm.
When it happened doesn't really matter.
Right.
Okay, here you go. Here's the story. So we go back out to visit my parents, and Santa Cruz is about an hour and a half, 2 hours from where we lived in the East Bay. And so I thought, hey, this is a good time to go visit. I'll go play the tournaments. You know, it's one of the most famous tournaments in the United States. And they don't do ace pots in California the way that we do in Louisiana and Texas and all that. But they are way more generous when it comes to 51. So 51 in the South, or at least everywhere I've ever played golf, mostly Texas, I guess, everybody kind of has this gentleman's agreement of in a casual round, if you get an ace, everybody on the card gives you $5. If you hit metal, everybody gives you $1. But it's just your card. California, the way they do it is everybody on your card gives you $5, and everybody that saw it or heard the story gives you $1. So it was an ace. I think it's like hole number 6 or something. It's the one that comes downhill back towards the road, kind of opposite direction of hole number 1. And I threw a CE Firebird that I had drawn my own flames on. It was one of my favorite discs, and it skipped and went in. And there's a bunch of people on the road. The parking lot was right there. People on hole 1. There's people finishing up on top of the world hole. There's a bunch of people right there. So I make that ace, and I mean, you know, it's a 24. I don't remember if it's 24 or 27 holes at that time, and that was hole 6 or 7 or something like that. So I mean, I'm not finishing the round for 3 hours later, and there was people coming up to me, "Hey, are you the guy that aced? Okay, here's $1." I mean, so even though there was no ace pot, I ended up with almost $100.
Oh wow!
And almost all of it won because everybody plays 51. So it was just this really cool experience that was the disc golf community I had never been a part of, where random people were like, "Hey, good shot."
Yeah.
And it's not that somebody in Texas wouldn't say, "Hey, I heard you had an ace, nice shot." There was just no dollar coming with it. But it was out there. So I mean, that was just a cool thing on a classic course at a major tournament. I think it was the first time my parents had ever come to see a tournament because they always lived in California and I was in Texas or Arkansas. And so it was just a really cool experience, the whole thing. And so we went and got ice cream, and I bought everybody my family ice cream after that because I had all of these ones.
That's awesome. What is something that's not disc golf related that you are obsessed with right now?
Obsessed with?
Yeah, that you're just into. Not much outside of disc golf.
Well, I mean, most of my time right now is spent. So, I've got a company that I run of that's kind of like my main source of income that I do, and then I do a podcast and I do disc golf pro tour stuff, and I have some YouTube videos that I'm doing for kind of hole review stuff, and that's most of my time. I guess if I'm trying to think about, okay, what have I passionately discussed with people lately? Not talking, politics or something like that. There's a series of books called the Wing Feather Saga.
Okay.
That is my favorite set of books ever. And I just finished reading it with my son recently. And so consequently, because of that, I've also recommended it to tons of our family friends that have kids the same age. And so I'm constantly getting in discussions with their parents about these books. I'm like, okay, your parent haven't read it? Okay, hey, 9-year-old, come here. Hey, me and you are about to do book club here, and we're going to talk about these books. So I guess
what's it called again?
The Wing Feather Saga.
The Wing Feather. I never heard of it.
It's probably my favorite musician is a singer-songwriter named Andrew Peterson out of Nashville, and it's a series of books that he wrote, and they're just, the story is great. And so one of the things I love about the book, in just about every TV series, every movie, every other story where the main characters are children, the parents or the guardians are idiots.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, they
or any sitcom or whatever.
Exactly. I mean, especially sitcoms. The dad is just a bumbling dolt.
I hate that.
And the mom's putting down the dad, and like nobody in the family encourages each other. Like it's just until the end of the episode when they all hug.
Right.
But they've spent 25 minutes saying how stupid everybody is. Right. So in this story, the parents and the guardians are absolutely fallible, and that's part of the story is how they've messed up in the past. But they love their kids. They protect their kids. They sacrifice for their kids. And their kids are their kids are respectful, and they see that sacrifice and they feel that sacrifice. And so, I mean, there's just a fantastic dynamic. And, of course I love that because I'm a parent and I want my son and my daughter to feel that way about me, but it challenges me that I have to behave that way towards them.
Yeah.
Because I'm reading him the stories of these great parental figures, but then if I am not a great parental figure, he's holding it up to, how come you're not like that guy, Dad? So, I mean, it's just challenging all the way around. And it's just a fantastic story all the way around.
Very cool. I have to check that out. When you and I have talked music before, you did not subscribe to any music service, right? You still buy your songs individual, right? Like iTunes and stuff. Okay, so I can't. Okay, so what's the most recent song you've got? Or album?
So there was and this it's part of that same world. So Andrew Peterson has this this Christmas show that they put on called "Behold the Lamb of God."
Mm-hmm.
And it's a CD that they released like 15 years ago or something like that. And they do a tour, and it's only like about 15 spots because they start at the beginning of December and they're done by like the 20th or something like that. So it's very limited, and they do like one a night. I mean, they travel the country knocking this out. And so there's 6 or 7 singer-songwriters besides him that are part of this, and then just a slew of other crazy talented musicians. And when they put on the show, they do singers in the round for the first hour and a half, 2 hours. So each of those singer-songwriters comes up, explains the story behind a song, and leads that song that he wrote or she wrote, and all of those other people are the background musicians.
Oh, wow.
And then that guy steps away from the microphone, and one of the background musicians steps up and tells you about his song, and then they all help with that song.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, you want to talk about feeling not talented? Go sit in that room with those people.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous how musical they are. So they have a spot on there's one song that's sung on the CD and in the concert that they trade that person out each year. It's not the same person each year. So the guy this year was a guy by the name of Scott Mulvihill that sang this song, and he comes up to sing his individual song,
Mm-hmm.
And he's a stand-up bass player, and he's the only musician on the stage. And I was like, what? You can't have a song where there's just a stand-up bass.
Yeah.
And it's the most fantastic song I've ever heard. Yes. And so I got his, he just has an EP right now.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't even have a full-length album. So that's probably the thing I've downloaded most recently and listened to a lot. Holy cow, that guy is ridiculously good. Like really makes me feel bad
What
about
was the
my
name
musical
again?
life. Scott Mulvihill.
Mulvihill.
And that song's called "The Lord Is Coming." And it is man, he makes that stand-up bass thing. It's crazy. It's really crazy.
Very cool. So, but recently you started up, you mentioned it earlier, but your podcast, On the Box. And I really like the format where you have the 4 different, you have the first on the box, second on the box, and then of course you have the Bob, which can be, the topics are furthest from disc golf as possible. The
only rule about Bob is it has nothing to do with disc golf.
Yeah.
Something else.
So, but tell us a little more about the podcast.
So we're on episode 35 or 6 or something like that. And basically it's a tournament preview and review podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So talking about the tournament that just happened, talking about the tournament that's going to come up. And that's usually the first topic and the second topic. First on the box, second on the box. Third on the box is usually some sort of disc golf topic. So on this last episode, the topic was based off of the idea that FPO coverage is wanting, based on the article that Abby wrote on UltiWorld that came out.
Did she ever reach out to you? Because I remember you said something about if she listened, you'd love to talk to her.
No, she hasn't reached out to me, but I don't put that towards she's scared to talk or anything like that. It's just, I mean, she's probably not one of the few hundred people that listen to my podcast. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people, in the disc golf world that have tuned in just yet. So that's usually third on the box is that topic. So it sprung out of, so we did the Inside the Circle podcast, which was basically that same idea, disc golf preview or tournament preview and review. And then at the beginning of last year when we weren't going to do Inside the Circle anymore, I still had this desire to hey, there's people that listen to that. There's people that responded to that. It's out there, and I'm going to be paying attention to all this stuff. I'm going to be watching these tournaments, and so I assume there's other people. So I mean, that's kind of what it was born out of. I know there's people like me out there, and the way that I look at tournaments, going into it and coming out is, I'm not like a Moneyball sort of guy where statistics tell the whole story. But at the same time, the statistics do tell stories. And so that's what I like to get into is, why did Germ win Waco? Why was Nate's bogey on the playoff hole of Waco? Why was that such a peculiar thing? Well, the story was he had 0 OBs the entire tournament until the playoff hole. Like, that's worth talking about.
Yeah.
I find that sort of stuff interesting. And so that's kind of how, that's how I kind of, I don't write a script. I just come up with the talking points that here's the things that I think interesting. And basically that just comes from watching the footage and looking at the UDIS statistics and seeing what stories it tells, and then relaying those.
And that's what I like about listening, because we've talked before that has felt like that sort of talk show was missing from disc golf. And that's what I like, because I look at the stats and I look at sometimes, look at his putting percentage and stuff like that. But I don't see the story of what you just said, where he had not had an OB until that
crazy,
hole.
Right?
That's crazy. And so I almost feel like when I listen to your show, you're my tournament interpreter.
Okay.
Whereas I've watched the tournament, but I don't see these little stories in between, because that's just not how my brain works.
Right.
I'm watching it going, wow, that would have been a great shot. That would have been a cool, something for a video.
Wow, look at the rainbow in the background.
Right,
That's framed perfectly.
Yeah, that's what I think of. So, if you're listening to this podcast, you haven't checked it out. That's why I listen to On the Box, because I don't see those sports stories or statistic stories, and that's why I enjoy your show for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, and it doesn't. All of that comes out of, people ask me stuff about the podcast when it was first starting, and I said, well, I don't know how many people are listening, but I'm having fun.
Yeah,
like that's really all I'm doing is I'm looking at the stuff that interests me, and then talking into a microphone about it and putting it out there if anybody wants to listen. It's the stuff that I love to see in disc golf. And also I want people to be able to appreciate, Germ threw a flick really far. I want people to be able to appreciate how difficult that is.
Right.
In those circumstances, how hard is it to get a birdie on that last hole? Like those sorts of things I want to bring up an appreciation for, so that people can, I think one of the things that'll help grow disc golf is not just people that play, but people that are passionate about disc golf.
Right.
And that can talk to random people about it and try to stoke those fires in other people about why it's such a great thing, and maybe make those connections between, right? We've got the Masters coming up. There are people that love the Masters and have never heard of disc golf, but if they can appreciate what's going on out in Augusta, there's things they can appreciate about disc golf as well. So it's trying to get those connections between people, and hopefully I'm able to kind of, stir that fire within people to do it. Basically,
what every marketer wants is telling the story. You're just telling the story so people have a connection,
right,
with the players or with the event or whatnot. So, but it's not because I know you took a break because you kind of just follow the disc golf season, right? Or the touring season.
Yeah. All I'm really looking at is, disc golf pro tour events, national tours, majors.
Yeah.
Well, because I want to be able to watch it.
Right.
Because, I could look at stuff from like St. Patrick's Classic out in California. I could look at stuff for there, but there's no UDisc stats. It's just raw scores.
Right.
All you can really see is the super most obvious stuff. Oh, okay. So at Monkey Island yesterday, right? A guy off the third card shot the hot round of a 51 and jumped up. I think it was into fourth place, maybe.
Right.
John Jones, I think was his name. Not the MMA fighter, but different guy. So that's really all I can know from looking at the PDJ scores. But if there's video, if there's UDisc, well, all of a sudden you can dig way in. And just FYI, UDisc is fantastic. If you're not looking at UDisc live and you enjoy watching the tournaments, whenever I'm watching a tournament, I've got the YouTube up, if there's live coverage, hopefully, and I've got UDisc up, and I'm just watching the whole thing happen at the same time. Because there's some really cool stuff in there that we didn't have a couple of years ago.
And just real quick, because I've said this before, if you like this type of stuff, you like the stat stuff, make sure you let them know you like it by getting with that annual subscription.
Yeah, the pro subscription.
Pay that $4.99 for that year, and
It's
let those
huge.
give them guys more funds do this even more because it makes the game that much more exciting to watch.
Yeah, if you're, and this is just a small soapbox, if you're a guy that complains about disc golf coverage, about either there's not enough of it or there's not enough women's coverage or Smashbox is too grainy or, man, that commercial was too loud or whatever. If you haven't ever donated a dime to any of those guys, shut your mouth.
Yeah.
If you want to be involved, get involved. You know how all of these things get better? More money.
Yep.
That's how it gets better.
As
and
evil as some people may think that sounds.
And you may think, well, hey, what's my dollar going to do? I don't know. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
Throw your dollar in there and we'll see what they can do with it.
Yeah. So on the box, definitely check that out because what I like is, again, you don't just report on scores and things like that. You tell some of the stories behind there and you pick out the things that I know I miss. But that I'm assuming that kind of started with what you're doing with Disc Golf Pro Tour. In other words, that type of, hey, this is what I'm doing. Now I can start doing this for you guys at Disc Golf Pro Tour. What can we expect? Is that going to evolve into something more or?
So at the beginning of, I guess the very beginning of January, maybe it was in December, I just reached out to Steve Dodge and I said, hey, I like what the Pro Tour's doing. I like that it's growing. I've got some skills in the disc golf world. Let's see if we can figure something out, if that's something you're interested in. And basically what it turned into is to revive the Circle Zero, which was the show that would go on before the live coverage starts, in the 15 or so minutes before the live coverage starts. And that was one of the things that I told him I wanted to do was to have player interviews that aren't, hey, okay, Jerm, you shot a 52 today. How did it go? Right. Not that sort of thing. So we've started having these interviews that run before the events that I'm able to do with the players. So here's some interesting things that I've come across. I guess, so we've had 7 rounds in the Disc Golf Pro Tour, so I've had 7 interviews. Big Jerm, when he was a kid, his parents were quite hippies. His mother's name was Rainbow Weaver.
I remember this.
His name that he gave himself that everybody called him for a few years apparently was Lionheart. I find that very interesting. Ricky Wysocki, when he was in high school, was a really good baseball player, and his dad thought, hey, your future's in baseball. Ricky intentionally tanked his baseball tryout in order so that he could play more disc golf. He intentionally did not make the baseball team, even though he was a great player. He was striking out on purpose. He was overthrowing his cutoff guy. I mean, he was just messing stuff up all over the place. In order to not make the team.
That's hilarious.
Miles Seaborn has a biracial family, 3 adopted brothers and sisters, and his brother plays for Monmouth basketball.
And he's good.
He's a starter on a Division I team that made the tournament 2 years ago, I think. So I mean, it's finding out these stories is just it's just fun of kind of seeing. Paul Ulibarri's brother was at one point the best BMX rider guy in Arizona. So I mean, there's just stuff out there about all of these guys that's way more cool than, hey, he throws a forehand. Oh, look at that.
Right.
He's throwing a Prodigy, A1 or a Destroyer again on this hole. We know Paul throws destroyers. Paul throws destroyers. What else is there about Paul?
Right. What's the story?
Finding out that stuff behind is what I really love.
I think that's fantastic. And when I saw that, I was excited. I get excited for media and disc golf because I know we need it. And like you said, there's so many moving parts. There's so many little elements that we are, people want us to go from where we are now to, Golf Channel
right
in 2 days. And that's not going to happen. We've got to have all these little elements to make it happen. So I think that's really cool. So yes, I hope it evolves into something even more, and I hope we see more of you. But in the meantime, where can people find stuff more about you? Where can they follow you, what you're doing? Where can we go to listen to On the Box and all that?
So, I mean, the easiest place to enter is just the On the Box Facebook page.
Okay.
And there's just we just have fun discussions on there. I try to every episode leave some sort of question out there that has to be talked about on the Facebook page. And sometimes it's serious disc golf stuff, and sometimes it's not. So our Bob segment a couple of episodes ago was, and this came from a discussion that I had with Terry Miller and Steve Dodge and some other guys around dinner out in Arizona, was what's a normal food that if somebody brought on a plane, you would be very upset? And not just coming up with the stinkiest thing you can imagine, but something that somebody would actually be eating.
Right.
And so in that discussion that happened on the Facebook page, there's two interesting things. Miles showed us a picture of a bag of chips from when he was in the Philippines, and it was shrimp-flavored Pringles.
God.
Exactly.
Why would you even try to put that?
So, or Lay's. I mean, it was shrimp-flavored potato chips. So, yes. But then somebody posted, I think it was Jarrett Bass, maybe it was somebody else, that posted the opposite side of the equation. Instead of somebody bringing a terrible food on, let's say you're starving and you didn't have enough time to get some food in between flights. So you're starving on the plane and it's only a short flight, so there's no meal. And somebody sits down in front of you with Cinnabon or some wonderful smelling food.
And eats half of it and throws it away or something?
Like, which is worse, that you're salivating on the seat in front of you and you smell that cinnamon the whole time, or that somebody's eating shrimp-flavored Lay's in front of you. So, I mean, just come to the Facebook page. We have some fun discussions. If you're interested in the podcast, just look for On the Box with Dixon Jowers podcast, and it should be at all of the places where you find your podcasts normally. Yeah. I've got a YouTube channel that I've just recently started this year of a new segment called Hole Watch. And Hole Watch is basically a deep dive on one particular hole at a tournament that generally is going to cause some sort of drama. So like for Waco, we did hole number 5, which was the 17th hole of the round. And so what I look at is stats from the previous years. I look at, here's how if you're going to play it perfect, okay, here, look, Ricky threw this forehand last year, and then Paul threw this second shot from around that same spot, and that's how you go play this hole. Here's where you don't want to be. Look at this terrible spot that Germ was in or whatever. And we really dig into that one hole so that at least for that hole, we've got a good idea of some of the crazy stuff that can happen. And man, was hole 5 a hole where some crazy stuff happened at Waco. We've only got 2 episodes of that because there's only been a couple of major events that have happened this year. But there will be one of those coming out next week in anticipation of the Jonesboro Open. There's no On the Box this week because we already wrapped up Waco and there's no tournament coming this weekend. So there will be one next week leading into Disc Golf Pro Tour event out at Jonesboro. So if what I try to do on those episodes where there's not, so one of the segments will be tournament preview, one will be tournament review. So there's nothing to review. So what I'll try to do is to have an interview with somebody. And with that, I'll say, hey, Bobby Brown's going to be our interview this next week. What sort of questions do you have? And I'll give everybody opportunity to put their questions out there, and then I'll try to mix those into the interview. Excellent. So that'll be coming up next week. I have no idea who the guest will be. I've got some feelers out to some people, but we'll see. So that's how you can come find me. So just come over to the Facebook page and join our little crowd of people that love watching and talking about disc golf.
I'll grab the links too, and I'll put, so if you're listening and you want a quick way to get to those links, I'll put the links in the description of this particular episode. Or if I post it on Facebook, whatever, I'll put links in there so people can go to it quickly. So real quick, before we end, 2 quick questions. Okay. But I didn't notice, but I wasn't watching for it yesterday. Do you still hold your towel?
Of course.
Okay. If you've ever seen pictures of Dixon,
who doesn't hold a towel when they throw?
He's got a towel in his hand when he I've seen people have a disc in their hand. I've seen people have only the disc they're going to throw. But Dixon had, real quick, tell us the 2-minute version of why you have a towel in your hand.
I cannot stand a grain of sand or dirt on my fingers when I throw. I feel like I'm going to throw it into the street every time if there's anything between my fingers and the disc.
Yeah.
And so I'm just constantly wiping my hands. Constantly. I always have a towel. I'm constantly wiping my hands. And the weird thing is, I'm not obsessive about that in any other aspect of my life. I mean, like, I'll eat dinner without washing my hands, but man, I better not have a grain of salt or a grain of sand if I'm going to throw a disc. Like, I don't know. It's just this thing that's happened in disc golf. So because I'm just constantly wiping my hands, I've always got the towel, and I just feel like I need to have something else in my hand.
Yeah.
And so it's a towel.
That's interesting. And then the last question is, of course, I don't know if you listened to other episodes, but I want to know, what question do you have for our listeners? It can be anything. Doesn't have to be disc golf related. It can be anything. Just a question.
For the Answer Man listeners?
Yes.
You guys seem to love The Office, and that's a great show. But have you watched Arrested Development? Because it's better than The Office.
Oh.
It is. Now, The Office is a great show.
Arrested Development is, it's almost on another level.
Peanut butter and jelly is a great meal sometimes, but steak is also really good.
What if we say if you have watched it, what's your favorite scene, or what's your favorite
Of the Arrested Development?
Yeah,
Like you're asking me, or you're just going to put the question out there?
Put the question.
Yeah, I mean, there's many.
I know, but I want to know people's favorite. I want to see what people say as far as their favorite scene from the show.
I mean,
tell me your favorite.
I mean, I can't narrow it down to one scene because there's a million. If I had to say one episode,
okay,
probably the Afternoon Delight episode.
I can't remember what happened in that one.
Many things happened in that thing. So just very quickly, one of the things that happened is Michael Bluth is singing karaoke with his niece when they realize they're singing Afternoon Delight, and they realize that it's not as family friendly as the tune would make you believe. And they realize this in public in front of a bunch of people. So I mean, it's just it's so smart, and it's so daggum
Me
funny.
and Anthony were doing something the other day, and I was trying to remember. It was something like, and that's why you don't. Yeah, that's why you always leave a note.
Notes from the one-armed man. Yeah,
that's hilarious. All right, Dixon. Well, thanks again for coming on the show. It was great learning a little bit more about you and your start with disc golf, and of course your projects you have going on. And of course, we always wish you the best as far as on the Box and Disc Golf Pro Tour, and of course out there on the course playing Masters. I guess you're going to play from now on.
I'm old.
You're old man, huh?
Yeah, I've got the sore muscles from yesterday to prove it.
I did notice when you were walking up to get your trophy, you had a little limp there.
I did something wrong to my hip warming up for that second round. So like the whole round I would throw, and then I would limp back over and try to stretch. And that's why we came up with the idea that we need to be sponsored by Advil and BioFreeze, because all of us had something going on.
That's hilarious. All right, we'll take care.